So coming up next, we have Jason King, who's a senior QE manager of test data management at RBC. He's been there for several years doing that, and a lot of experience before that with QA testing and test data management. So Jason, if you want to get your slides queued up there, awesome. Take it away. Here you go.
So welcome everyone. If you come up with any questions as I'm going, I believe Arthur is going to be tracking those questions. And if there's anything that really is pertinent to right then and there, he will give me a little nudge and we will jump back to that screen or whatever, and I'll answer that question. So moving on, that was, I knew I was following up the keynote, but that was interesting, very eye-opening for me at least. Not to say RBC is bad, but we do things differently, that's for sure. So I have a few key things I wanted to go over. So obviously introduce myself first, and then I was asked to give a rundown of what our problem was that we solved using service virtualization and working with Parasoft. So I'm going to go over what was the problem, how we solved it, and where that leaves us in the big picture of things. And then a little bit of time for questions, possibly a lot of time, depending on how fast I go. So who am I? Obviously, I don't look anything like that anymore. 2 years of COVID working from home and refusing to shave kind of made things bushier and whatnot. But I've been at RBC for nearly 20 years. I think come January, it'll be 19 years. I started off as a student working in the mainframe environment, doing environment support and testing, and then moved my way up into quality assurance, which I've been in now for just over 15 years, I believe, actually. I did spend 2 years in our Center of Excellence for Quality Engineering. So we made that change over to quality engineering instead of quality assurance. And I was responsible for test data management and service virtualization, trying to roll out best practices and approaches for all those different groups, not just one central group, but across all of the bank, which in a second you'll see is large, to say the least. And then most recently, I've been in the wealth management area of RBC. I've been there for 3 years, concentrating on just their test data management and service virtualization areas, as well as working on different approaches to things. So kind of what we were going over earlier, coming up with new approaches to things and rethinking some of the ways that we do things and moving away from manual testing and such. Okay, so what was our problem? Our problem, to put it lightly, was that at RBC, we have many different technology stacks. So by that, I mean, we have, as you can see here, we have client server environments, centralized databases. So this would be your OCON and SCON, so Oracle and SQL Server in managed environments. We also have an IBM mainframe that we deal with, and we've got cloud environments that are being ramped up daily and expanding out in that direction. So for us, we need to manage the integration of each of these different environments. We need to make sure that there's data moving between each of these. And not only that, we need to make sure that they're all available and talking to each other at the same time. To add another issue to that, we will say, we now have time zones. Yes, everyone's working from home, but now we're even more remote. So RBC, because of the size of RBC, right, we're talking millions, or not millions, I shouldn't say that, thousands of people. We have groups residing in North America. So specifically for me, I work with people in the Toronto area and people in the Minnesota area for US wealth management. On top of that, we have development teams and QE testers in Europe. We have them in Asia as well. We have them all over the place. So not only does this environment now need to be integrated properly and talking properly during our business hours, we're now talking that it needs to be available basically 24/7 and sustainable in that way. So we need to be able to make sure that it can handle performance testing, that it can handle unit testing, your functional testing, automated testing at any time of the day, all sorts of stuff like that. When you look at it that way, that's great. Most smaller companies, and sorry, I should have prefaced this by saying, looking at this, I hope that everyone sees some sort of takeaway or similarity to what they're working with. RBC being the size that it is, we probably have one of the most nightmarish landscapes to deal with. So not everyone will have an IBM mainframe, or not everyone will have a cloud environment right now. You may just be looking at this little piece here along with North America. So hopefully everyone can draw some sort of a connection to this, okay? With RBC, because we have different applications within each of these different environments, each application may have multiple projects going. So on top of that, each of these different groups is now connecting multiple little groups within these, connecting to the same environment, and everyone is stumbling over each other. And that, when you then add in, we have another add-on issue, is third-party environments. So this could be your cloud environments, your AWS, where you're not hosted on-prem, could be off-prem. This could be, in our sense, where I am right now in wealth management, this could be your trading parties and whatnot, where book of record is no longer within RBC, it's now external, because that's the integration point for other companies as well. So as you can see, this becomes really messy. And one of the key things that you well, no, I shouldn't say most, hopefully some of you have looked at this and said, well, that's great. It's great when it's working, but what about when it's not? And that was what our problem was that we had actually one of our key third parties has a batch processing window, which is, if memory serves, between 3 a.m. and supposed to be 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But some days it goes way past that, and it's sometimes a 4-hour window. So you can just imagine, if that's early hours for us, that's right in the middle for Europe and Asia. So we were finding that, let's say that outage is 4 hours. That's 4 hours out of an 8-hour day gone for the European groups. And that is huge. That's time that we're paying for, where they maybe are not able to actually execute a single test case or do anything. Yeah, they could be looking at, let's build out our test cases. Let's write our, I know I shouldn't be saying this, but let's write our documentation. Let's get things ready for when we do have access to the environment. But we have no guarantees as to when that environment is available. So this, as my next point is, this was a huge impact to time and cost of delivery. So things were taking longer than they should have because we were working on half days basically. And it was costing more because of that. So each of these groups out here in Asia and Europe, though they may have been RBC based, they may also have been vendor partners, meaning that we were paying contract wages, right? So suddenly you're paying, yes, they may be a little bit less offshore, but you're paying more for time that they are doing absolutely nothing. Okay. So what was our solution? What we ended up implementing was we worked directly with our Parasoft contact. We had a technical team involved from both sides. We identified all of the key touch points within this context that we could simulate, because we figured, okay, if an environment is not available, can we make it appear to be available? And that was what led us to the idea of service virtualization. So by virtualizing any one of these applications, environments, groups, whatever, we were able to allow, for instance, the European team to continue doing their work, or the Asia team to continue doing their work during their hours, okay? And that meant that there was less delays, we were able to keep moving with everything, and productivity continued to go back up to where it should be. So one of the questions that I know I was asked to kind of talk about, or not really answer, but reflect on from our point of view, was how did we get to this point, right? What what helped us decide that this was the right thing to implement. We did a bunch of use case scenarios. We talked with multiple vendors to see what they could do based on our use cases, and identified that across the industry that this fit as service virtualization. And from there, the more business-sided process, I guess I should say, for people is that we started up an RFP. So we requested that, if memory serves again, 3 or 4 vendors provided us a write-up and a description of what they felt they could do, and if it seemed good enough, we had them come in and actually demo it and set it up. Not to deviate from the Parasoft theme, obviously, to be transparent, we had other groups, including, at the time it was CA Technologies, now Broadcom, we had IBM, and we had Parasoft. Those were the 3 big ones that came in. So obviously we weren't looking at little groups. We had the big players at the table and worked with them to decide and understand what the best approach was for us that would work. And we looked at implementing it. So when we got to that decision that that was the correct approach, what we did was we worked with Parasoft, as I said earlier. We worked with them and we had them actually come in and help us build things out. Okay, so recommendations from that point of view, from my point of view as well, definitely get yourself a Parasoft rep, talk to them and find out what their recommendations are. Find out what your server sizing should be, things like that. And that's where we worked with them. They gave us all the details that we needed. We built the infrastructure, or the hardware infrastructure side, to their specifications, and we moved forward. One of the other things that we did as part of this was we got a lot of training in. We made sure that the users were fully aware of what they were going to be seeing, how it would operate. So users, knowing that the outage was coming during the day, they could go in and they could flip a switch and turn on the service virtualization environment. Okay. That allowed them to control it. So if the environment was needed sooner or later, or it was possible to flip back to the real version earlier, then they did that. They jumped over earlier. So from our point of view, the pros and cons. So I kind of hummed and hawed about this part, because the pros are definitely outweighing the cons, because I really couldn't find any cons that I would say were hard and fast cons. So as I was saying earlier, all of the pros were everything was going back to normal, essentially. So sorry, our development teams were saying that the environments were up again and they were able to proceed. Our testing teams, who were our primary focus, were saying that they could get in and they could do all of the testing that they were expecting to do. We were reducing our costs on our projects because environments were not delaying our project deliveries. And we were also producing a better quality product because we were actually able to say, this is exactly what we were looking to do, and this is what we got out of it. Sorry, there's something popped up in my, okay. Yeah. So from a cons point of view, as I said, I really couldn't come up with any. All the cons that I came up with were not issues. They were growing pains, and they were things that either identified a short-term issue that we needed to resolve right away, or they were things that we said, hey, that feeds into a longer-term plan, because, as my next slide will really show, this is not a one-time thing. Don't expect to go out and get yourself a vendor, get in touch with Parasoft and say, hey, set this up, boom, and it's done. No, it's something that takes time, and it's something that over the years you will continue to build out on. So for us, what is next? Okay, so we sat down at the end of the first year and we kind of built out a checklist and said, okay, these are the things that we did well. These are the things that we feel we should have done better. These are the things that we want to improve on, right? And I'm going to list a few of these. So doing it better, and these are more recommendations for others. So lessons learned, you could call it, I guess. Work closer with the Parasoft team. They have so many things at their fingertips to help. Definitely work with them, and they can give a lot of guidance. It may be new to you, but they have probably seen it. If they have not, then someone else in their organization maybe has, because there's many little groups that are assigned to each of the different contracts that they have. Another thing that we realized we should have done better was more training on the client forward side of the service virtualization. And by clients, I mean my team's clients, so the people that are using service virtualization. They would have benefited from being able to use it better and know what they could do with it more. What would we have done differently? Really, for that, we would have planned a bit better and made a bit more of a roadmap. We had our use case as I defined it. That was great, but that was our use case that turned into a landmine that we kind of set off, and we learned that there was a lot more that we should have done and could have done. And in the aftermath, my team has been going to other teams and saying, so this is what our lessons learned were, this is what we tried, this is what we could have done. Does any of this ring or resonate with you in something that we could offer you, something that we could work on with you, and just build out a bigger ecosphere that's fully service virtualization enabled? Which leads into what else could we do? Some of the things that we are looking at for the future, we are definitely looking at building out our ecosphere, as I was just describing it, trying to include more groups, more applications, as well as some of the things from our keynote speakers discussion of move away from manual testing. So to do that, use automated testing, think left, push some stuff to the developer, right? Get the developer doing some of the testing, or even automate that testing in the sense of have it triggered as part of your build and your deploy, right? Part of CI/CD, things like that that may not always be an option because of your data or your environment, right? So as an example, we may have an application which does its implementations during that same outage window that we were talking about earlier. Well, to be able to do a smoke test or a quick regression test once that implementation is done to ensure that it was stable, we would need to turn on the service virtualization environment to allow them to do that test. But let's say that on top of that, there's some data that they're not able to get because they want some sort of a negative test, or they have a regression test that is based on a production issue that they had, and they would like data that matches that. We can use service virtualization to create or simulate that data and make it available to them. That's another thing with the geographic implications for us, is that we are able to now look at having development teams in other regions that are able to continue to do their development, so their unit testing can actually occur during that outage as well. So I've kind of covered the next steps. For us, the next steps really are just keep on going, keep on building out our strategy, keep on building out our approach. Because as I said earlier, this isn't a one and done situation. Nothing in life, especially corporate life, ever is. And it's something that we believe in and we have seen the benefits from. So we would like to continue building it out and make it better. So what other options do we have? There are always other options. Same as I mentioned earlier, there are other vendors, there are other ways of doing things. But based on our scenario, this was the best solution, and it is the one that we ultimately chose and have continued to build on. So I know I kind of talked a lot and rushed through a lot,